panelists, Sean Apperson, Tyson Mendias, Dr. Kirk Parsley, and of course, Will Sharman, our studio operator. And we've also got former NFL athlete, John Welbourn, now CEO of Power Athlete, and he will usually be joining us in the studio as well. Hey guys, for those that are listening, why don't you introduce yourselves? We'll start with Tyson.
My name is Tyson Mendias. I'm the head boxing coach at Archetype Boxing Club out here in Austin, Texas.
Do you remember the first time he was? Remember we shot some videos?
Yes, I do.
How bad it was?
And I could look at me.
And Sean just got. He was like, "Oh, so guys, you want to wrap your?"
I've never been on the camera like that before.
Sean was articulate.
I hated every minute of it.
And then at the end, you're like, punch.
Yeah.
Punch him.
I couldn't answer a simple question. I was like, Mike, Sean's go
fix him.
Help him.
Help me.
Sean Apperson, been involved in mixed martial arts for my whole life. And I opened up Archetype Boxing Club last year. So just trying to get people involved in a different alternative fitness and bring that part of martial arts up a little bit. I think boxing's kind of slumped the last decade. So
yeah. You remember the days like Tyson? Like
the glory days?
The glory days.
There was a golden era. There was a golden era that was the peak.
They're all heavyweights
came
too.
in, yeah.
Heavyweights back then.
Yeah, and that's all that mattered. It was
Right.
like the heavyweight champ. Now it's like UFC is the opposite. It's like heavyweights right now. They
Right.
suck. Like,
Okay.
Boring.
Yeah, I couldn't name a heavyweight right
Fury.
now. But
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Doc.
Kirk Parsley, also known as Doc Parsley, former SEAL, got out of the military, went to college, went back in the military to go to medical school, went back to the SEAL teams as their doctor, and learned everything that I know about really being a doctor by helping guys perform better. So I specialize in helping people perform better. I'm not the guy to see when you have the flu or a cold or a broken leg or something. Like I'm the performance guy, and so everything I do is about taking guys like us and making us better, bigger, better, faster, stronger, smarter, better looking, better in the bedroom, all that stuff.
And so you work heavily with the Liver King.
Yeah, me and the Liver King are tied.
one.
Right. So you're the culprit.
I actually met that guy. I didn't know it until all of this stuff blew up, and then I saw what his product was. Because I'd seen pictures of him on I didn't know how that was. And then I saw his product. I was like, "Why do you still have that product?" And I remembered the reason I had it is some guy came to one of my booths and introduced himself and gave me the product. And I vaguely remember, but he didn't look like that.
175 pounds.
He's like 5'7". He's short.
He's a little bitty dude.
Yeah, a little sawed off dude.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I actually know that guy. I didn't.
5'7", 240.
Oh, I think he's going to be a regular topic on this show. Hey, John, introduce yourself, brother.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We've got you.
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Yeah, John Welbourn, former NFL player, played a decade in the NFL, and then as I was retiring and transitioning out, or maybe going back and playing for another year, I got approached by CrossFit to work with them. Worked as a specialty matter expert for CrossFit for almost 9 years. About a year or two after I started working with them, I realized that I was building a ton of brand loyalty into a brand I didn't own. So I started Power Athlete, which is my company, and we do military contracting, help people develop online fitness technologies and programming, have a coach's certification, and recently started training some athletes again, which has been really very hilarious. That's how I met Sean. I've been just got done working with Victor and Arash from Six Blades. So,
and you sell feminine care products too, right?
Yes, I do. I do my best. So I've known Doc Parsley, unfortunately, for almost probably. Man, it feels like coming up on 20 years, but yeah, no, it's been a good. And then we transitioned out here to Austin from California in 2016. So we're kind of pre-Joe Rogan era, which I actually, when I look at Austin, I kind of break people into like pre-Joe Rogan and post-Joe Rogan. And we were doing some military contracting, and it just necessitated a move out of California to do
it. So he was born in California.
Mm-hmm.
You were California.
California.
Were you?
Fresno, California.
Fresno.
It's a better part of California, though. It's like the
Jesus.
The Midwest of California.
Sean's from
We're not like Southern California. That's a different world.
Well, the guys I used to play with, I played football at Berkeley, and I played with a couple guys from Fresno, and they say there ain't no hose in Fresno. So,
yeah, I can't picture you at Cal. But
really? I mean, small, very conservative public school in California. I mean, I don't know why. I mean,
you had a nose
small
ring,
conservative,
purple hair, and
I
mean, you still wear skinny jeans.
I look at attending Berkeley as going into the Lion's Den. I really think what happens when you go to a place like that is you kind of go and, I mean, probably like most people here, we're probably fiscally very conservative and maybe socially liberal, like go live the life that you want. I've always believed in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and having people go out and live the life they want. And I don't want you to have to ask for my permission to live your life. And I sure as hell don't want to have to ask you permission for me to live my life. And I think I went to Berkeley just because I wanted to be able to read and write to the best of my ability to go to law school. And they also had a bitchin' 4-year scholarship for Cal Berkeley sport letterman to go to Bolt Hall, which is the law school. So that's what I was gunning for. So I graduated in 4 years, got my master's education in my 5th, and applied to go to law school. And then I got drafted. I figured how long do dudes play? I mean, I was a middle class white kid from Palos Verdes, really upper white middle class kid from Palos Verdes. And I figured I'd play for a year or two, and that turned into a decade. So it ended up being kind of very fortuitous in many ways.
And you played for both teams that were just in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I got drafted by Andy Reid's first year to the Philadelphia Eagles. I was the second pick in the 4th round, came in and started for the next 9 years there at right tackle and left guard. And then got into a contract dispute with the Eagles because Andy's fat and cheap, which we already know he's fat, but nobody's ever talked to him being cheap. But ended up getting traded to Kansas City Chiefs, where I went on and played for another 4 years. And then my 10th year, I went to go play for the New England Patriots.
Goddamn.
Big boy.
How big are you in the pick? We're looking at the Eagles pick.
I played most of my career about 306, 308. I was the only dude that they had ever had in the bod pod over 300 pounds under 10% body fat. So I was about 8%, 7.5%, 8% right there.
Shut the front
So,
door.
yeah. So I tripled 535 on the bench, squatted 700 and, was sub 10% body fat. 272, 273.
More big guys to wrestle with.
He says that, but he looks so much.
99.9% of people never reach 8% body fat.
Right.
Well, and at over 300 pounds, nobody does that.
Yeah.
Like nobody's that big. Like
yeah, especially getting tested 36 times a year.
Yeah.
But I also I squatted 610 when I was 19, benched 500 when I was 22. So I was very fortunate in that back in those early days, if you had questions, you could reach out. I mean, when I was 14, the old power lifter that lived down the street was a guy named George Zangus, who invented the super suits and the wraps at a company called Marathon Nutrition. And we started taking creatine when I was 14 years old. So, we trained with a world-class dude from the time I was pretty little, 14 until I was 18, and then went to Cal, and there were some really strong. If you look at the amount of NFL players that come out of Berkeley, it's pretty high. And then my rookie year in the NFL, I got hooked up with a guy named Mauro De Pasquale. And Mauro, who was really the father of carb cycling, the anabolic diet, and started working with Charlie Francis and him. And I really had some amazing, amazing people early on in my career that really set the tone on this thing. And I just learned to diet. Building a big aerobic base, making sure you're doing all the stupid stuff. And we actually had a contest who could come in. We actually had a contest. It was a pool for who could come in the leanest in the bod pod. And then we also had a Mr. Potato Head award for the fattest guy. So our fattest guy was 30%, then I was 8. So I ended up winning a few $1,000 for that.
But also, if I remember correctly, you were born at 26 pounds, right?
I was a 10.5 pound baby, but I also weighed 30 pounds at 6 months.
Yeah.
So there's a picture my mom has of me 6 months old, and I'm sitting on this scale, and the doctor about had a heart attack. So I was always pretty tall, always pretty big. I think I was 6 foot, $165 when I was a freshman in high school. And I remember, and you guys will appreciate this boxing story. I thought I had potential to be a heavyweight boxer, and always had dreams of being a professional boxer. I started in martial arts. And when I was 10 years old, I saw I think it was Hagler fight Tommy Hearns. And I remember my dad was big into boxing. We watched it. And I remember thinking like, that kicking is stupid. I never want to kick anybody again. And so the only place, the Y in St. Peter was too far. So I ended up at this kickboxing academy. And they had a ring, and that's where I learned to box. And then later on, I started working with a guy named Nono Lobonsier in high school. And then I boxed on the Cal boxing team in the off season. And then Raphael, who trained me in the NFL, he was also Antonio Tarver's coach. So Jimmy Williams and those guys. So Jimmy since passed away, but you know, that was so that was always a big component of my training. And you know, when you can do that stuff, and especially like the skills, as you guys know, Sean knows, playing in the NFL is a lot like fighting against a bunch of dudes that don't know how to use their hands.
John Welbourn is the reason you should never pick a fight everywhere, because you never know who you're dealing with.
You got to be smart in your selection. Like, you know, first time I saw him, though, when we did that workout with Tim, I joined you guys, just stone faced. He didn't smile until afterwards.
All you see is his ears.
And then you're like, oh, okay, he's actually a nice guy. But dude, if you're at the bar and you're getting into a spat, just check.
Look at the
Yeah,
ears.
the guy has
Always check the
cauliflower
ears.
ears. You avoid that
And then if the
You
nose
avoid that.
looks like it's been broke
50
multiple
times. Yeah.
you assess your situation.
Walk away.
Break
And
it.
if there's
Or then just it'll be like my buddy that got beat up in slow.
So, John, you like this. You know, when there's a group of SEALs, it's the group effect. It's the same thing with like fraternity guys that go out and they all get drunk. They're even think they're tough, and so the weakest guy will start a fight because he knows all 29 come in and back him up. San Luis Obispo is where these guys used to train. What was it, the Lions Den?
The pit.
The Pit.
The Pit, yeah, Hackelman, John Hackelman.
We so you probably remember the story. It was a West Coast SEAL teams, so we have some training around there, and on the weekends they went to SLO. And of course, there's about 20 of them, and they go into a bar that happened to be all the guys that work out at the Pit and start running their mouths. And the fight happened. It spilled out into the street. One of my buddies was involved, and he got knocked out. And I guess he told me the guy saw him. He's on the street looking. His arms are just out like this, the rigor mortis. And I think you guys cleaned house. And SEALs are no longer allowed as a unit
To go to SLO.
Yes. So again, someone's always bigger, badder, and tougher. But hey, John, you got the Super Bowl relevant current events. Let's get your reflections, man. First off, did you guys see that national anthem?
Yeah. Which one?
By Chris Stapleton?
Yeah.
Which one do you think?
Oh yeah.
I'm just being an asshole.
And by the way, he invites us, John. Kirk invited us to dinner on a Sunday while the Super Bowl. My wife and I didn't. I'm like, he must have something to tell us. And then finally, he canceled, realizing that he'd scheduled it during the Super Bowl. Totally un-American.
Well, you know, Doc doesn't really keep up on current events, and if you ask him, he'd be like, "What do you Super Bowl? Who the fuck's going to watch that thing? Only like 18 million people." But it's yeah,
Minus
it's
50,
good.
So having
dude.
played the both teams,
Well, I'll get into that, but a similar story. So I grew up in like, you know, Los Angeles, and we were down in Orange County, and a buddy of mine is from Huntington, and we went, a bunch of us went down into a bar on Main Street in Huntington, and we walked in and all of a sudden realized that the bouncer was Tank Abbott.
Oh my God.
And he's like, I mean, this is when he was like fucking like literally crushing beers. Like he must have had like 40 beers and was looking to kill somebody. And I remember thinking like, we should just fucking leave. This guy is absolutely a buzzsaw. And he was like kind of like, you know, just like when you saw him in the ring, like even though he looked out of shape, like that was like, this was a bad version of whatever the hell he was. And I was like, man, this is going to be a bad deal. He's eyeballing us. So you know, it's good to recognize those guys quickly. But you know what? I was excited for the game just because I really actually liked the story for Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for the Eagles. You know, the fact that he got benched in a national championship game for Tua. I'm not a huge Tua fan. I'm just not a fan of NFL players that are like China dolls that get hurt that much. And like no shade on him, he's just not very durable. So he gets benched, and then he, you know, transfers out, goes to another school, gets into it, loses, you know, second round draft pick, goes to the Eagles, and all of a sudden has this, you know, metamorphosis and really turns into a good player. And they threw a lot of shade at him early in the playoffs that he wasn't a high caliber quarterback. So I was definitely pulling for that kid. I also like the offensive line a lot for the Eagles. And, you know, I lived in Philly for 5 years, and it was a much better town than Kansas City is. in terms of being like a young guy. Kansas City was awful in terms of like a social life. I love Philly. Philly is like, and you guys will appreciate this analogy. Like you open like your closet and there's like a leather jacket in there that you haven't worn in years. You're like, oh, let me try this on. It fits perfectly. You reach in, there's like $100 in the pocket. You're like, man, I love this coat. How come I don't wear it more? That's what Philly reminds me of the minute I get there. It's like an old coat that I have $100 in the pocket. I really enjoyed playing for the Eagles and was really pulling for them. I just knew that on paper, even though it was like a 1-point spread on paper, it's really hard to beat Mahomes and Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid has done this many, many times. He's got as many wins as he has. I just knew that if it got close, Andy was going to pull it out. So I kind of expected the Eagle or the Chiefs to win, but was definitely pulling for the Eagles.
Well, at least, man, I'll say, for Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, two class acts, man, who are going to have long careers in the NFL. So,
yeah.
What
No,
about
they're great.
what about
What's
Travis and Jason Kelsey? Thoughts on the two brothers squaring
Yeah,
up?
you know what? That's another amazing story. The one brother, the center, Jason, I believe it is. Super hardworking. They go to Cincy. His brother gets kicked off the team for smoking weed, and he goes in and talks to the coaches. Promises if his brother comes back, he'll live with them, take care of him, and he won't make any mistakes. And really embodied. Like I have two older brothers, and that story really was pretty amazing in terms of like I'm my brother's keeper. So he did what his little brother needed him to do. And that kid has turned into an absolute rock star. So, and then it was super, I really appreciated that he was like walking around and his mom had like the split outfit. And then when Jason saw, or it was Jason saw his mom, he just started crying hysterically. I'm like, I appreciate that. They just seem like really good dudes. That guy's got a good sense of humor and he's pretty articulate. So I always appreciate when offensive linemen articulate and have good senses of humor. Also often, NFL players, like the only ones you kind of see are the guys with the bling and, kind of all this bullshit people get thrown into, but there's some really intelligent, funny dudes. And as a group, usually offensive linemen are really kind of witty and smart and pretty funny if you give them the opportunity.
Nobody ever gives the mic to the offensive lineman.
Oh, do you know why? Because they're going to break all the stereotypes. The NFL likes a certain image, and it's just not like funny, articulate, big guy with a beard. Just look at the pundit. Look at the guy sitting on the sport desk.
And people have never played the game don't understand how complex offensive line is, right? They just think, you just kind of box the guy in front of you. It's like, no. There's so much going on every play. You have to know so much to play O-line. Like it's legit. It gets no glory, but it takes a smart guy to be able to do it.
Yeah, well, it's a fun job. You get to just, I don't know if we can use profanity. You just get to fuck people up, and you get to do it every day, endlessly.
Just in case we can use profanity, I'm going to go straight for the F-bomb.
Okay.
Well, we did have we did have a clean rating until.
Okay. Well, the analogy of messing people up doesn't hit home enough, but it's a fun job. Like imagine all day just sharpening your sword with the intent to just go out and slice people in half. So it's and then you get to do it with your friends. But it's a fun job. But like if you turn on the TV and you look at the pundits, it's usually like they're all about Booger McFarland now, and Booger was absolutely awful. If I see him today, I'm still going to take his lunch money regardless of how old we are. So to see him sitting up there pontificating on all this when that guy couldn't play dead is always hilarious to me.
Did you guys catch the entertainment? Or did you not really pay attention this year?
I did. I thought it was great.
Did you watch the
panicked
halftime
that they were
show?
going to fall off the little.
I thought she was going to fall off.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's not good for ratings.
Is that Rihanna?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch that thing.
No.
They were attached.
They were attached, but I'm like, damn.
He's complaining he didn't get coffee. Here's some whiskey to make up.
Did
An Affleck commercial.
Did you guys see when Rihanna was doing her deal with those like little white dudes that were dressed like sperm, dancing around her? Did you guys do you remember the movie like Look Who's Talking? Remember with like where they showed the sperm swimming down? They're like, over here, guys, and they were like all talking on trying to get into the egg. Like as I was watching it, all I could think of is Look Who's Talking. It reminded me of that opening scene with the sperm swimming towards the egg. I was like, this is weird.
This is why I don't know anything about current events. I feel dumber already just after this full conversation.
Well, Ben Affleck did that commercial. That was, did you guys catch that? Where he was
Didn't catch
a
any of
Dunkin'
it.
Donuts.
Uh-uh.
We'll throw that up. It was pretty good. He'll just play it without volume, but if you have time, go check it out. I think the biggest winner though is you're tracking Gracie Hunt, right, John?
Oh,
The owner.
I'll give you so I was at Tony Gonzalez's Hall of Fame, and I remember, so Lamar Hunt was our owner. Clark Hunt was his son, and then his wife is Octavia. And so always very, very nice people. Every time we'd see them, they were always super friendly, but I knew him as like the owner's son. And I remember their kids because he has 2 daughters and a son. I remember them as little kids. And then I went to Tony Gonzalez's Hall of Fame, and I saw Clark, who's now the owner's dad since passed away, Mr. Hunt. And I saw them, and all of a sudden he was like, I saw his daughter, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I remember her as like a girl, like a little kid. And then all of a sudden she's like the #1 stunner. And I was like, wow. And then I saw her Maxim magazine spread, and I was like, she's, so the daughter of a billionaire. I think she played soccer at SMU maybe. And, pageant queen and the whole deal. I mean, that girl has, she checks a lot of boxes. Good for her. She's loving
the spotlight, man. Hey,
she's, yeah.
No comment. Noted. All right.
Oh no, she's, yeah.
Go ahead.
I feel a little weird about it because I remember them as little kids, and then I saw her and I was like, oh man, like, and then I just keep laughing about it, being like, all the players are probably like side-eyeing her, and they're like, dude, I'm totally gonna get cut if I go talk to her, but it's totally worth it, But she seems pretty sharp, man. She looks like she knows the deal pretty well.
Well, just a reminder to the audience, you can submit questions. Again, you've got a great group of guys here, subject matter experts in their own right with a lot of life experience. So anything you got, throw it our way. Non-political, of course. This is Men's Journal. This is not Fox News or CNN. But going through some updates on Men's Journal. Did you guys check out Macallan just auctioned a single bottle of scotch for $250,000. That's FU money right there.
I almost bought that one. I just barely got it outbid.
I'm cheap. I'll take the cheap stuff. John, what do you drink if you're drinking? What's your drink?
I'm really kind of digging on, what is it, Macallan or Milam and Green. They do a bourbon. They're out in Blanco, and we've been going out there. They have a really bitchin', I guess, tasting room and all that. So they do a pretty high-end bourbon. So we've been drinking that, actually. I wouldn't say super regularly, but that's the one I'm kind of digging on. I really like this whole Texas bourbon culture. I think there's some really neat ones.
It's good.
Yeah. So
hey, is that the one you got me for my birthday?
It is.
That small batch. That shit was legit. That was awesome.
So there's if you guys might not get that far out, but off of 281 there's a little town called Blanco, and they have, obviously, when you pull into town, Milam and Green is the distillery. They have a little tasting room. You can go in there and buy stuff, and they always have one-off and little things. But then if you go a little farther down, there's this place that does the most decadent buffalo milk ice cream. I think it's called something del Oro, and it's $20 for a little pint like this, but it's probably the best ice cream I've ever had. So on the weekends, I'll be like, hey, let's go to that ice cream place and stop at the bourbon place. So we'll stop and get a drink, and then we take the kids to get ice cream. So it's turned into a fun little thing for us. But if you guys are ever out that way and hit it, you got to go to this ice cream place. It is
how do you milk
very carefully. But I'm not a big sweets or an ice cream guy, but oh my God, it's unreal. And they have buffalo milk ice. No, they have buffalo milk and a whole bunch of other stuff that's really cool. So it's kind of a fun adventure, but man, that bourbon place is phenomenal.
It's like Badger's milk. You guys remember that joke?
Yeah.
Remember the Badger's milk for strength? You get what comedy it was. John, I think, what do you guys drink? What's your...
I like the Still Austin whiskey.
Steel Austin?
Yeah, it's good.
Still
Austin.
Sean?
I like bourbon.
Steel is in the metal. Okay.
I like bourbon. I mean, I remember when Pappy's first got popular, you get in a bar and you could do a whole tasting of it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't crazy expensive. It was It's so good. And
So
now it's
Pappy's always top shelf.
yeah, but before it was like you could do a flight, and it was still like $25 for like a 2-ounce pour, and it'd go up. And if you had their like 23, it was like probably $60. But now it's just you can't get it anywhere, and the entire bottle will be like $5 grand.
That's why they're top shelf. What's a pour now in bar? It's like
If you get a pour now of like the 20-year or the 23, it's probably like $200 for like a
Jesus.
1 or 2 ounce pour,
and isn't that because
if it's even there.
one of Pappy's warehouses burnt down? Wasn't that the story?
Well, and I think that they just limit the supply, drive the cost up. Yeah, there's always, the employees tampering and the production reducing, but I think it's mainly like they got popular. They won some awards. They're like 15-year, won a bunch of awards, gold medals, and it blew up. And then they just cut and now a lot of them do that. Now, like any like popular bourbon, they just cut their supply, and all of a sudden the prices go up. You can't get it, and it's like exclusive. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Sean's a wine guy,
I do like wine.
avid wine guy.
I like any
like
fine
anything
spirit.
fine.
Or if,
Nice.
it's not good, then
High maintenance, this boy.
I actually forgot to.
I don't
forgot
bother
to,
with the
prep Will
peasant
with the photo
drinks.
of Him and all his bike. His biking outfit. 'Cause
Oh,
he's a big time
have you
biker,
seen
right?
me in the bike? He made me bike with him.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Did you get into one of those tight outfits?
big guys.
oh,
Yeah.
it was not a good look.
Hey, Sean, have you ever heard of a winery? It's in Ventura, San Luis Obispo area called Cinque Nam.
Yes, that's a very high end one that they ship all over the world, and it's like impossible to get. And yeah, I've actually had a couple of those bottles. They're amazing.
Yeah, so we've been on their wine list.
Really?
We were at a restaurant, pretty high end restaurant, and the guy that we were with is like a super like high end wine connoisseur, and he ordered a few of those bottles, and I was like, this is great, and I snapped a picture, and then I went back and I was like, oh, let me see if I can get on their list. So I applied, and I got a denial, and they proceeded to deny me for the next 10 years. And so every year I reapplied, and then finally in year 11, they were like, we'll issue you an allocation. So if you don't buy an allocation, they boot you off the wine list. So like every year we buy these allocations, and like it's like we don't have any more Tuesday night wines. Like we go over to somebody's house and I'll be like, oh dude, like let's drink this thing. So it's that's become like really a nice bottle for us. So yeah, that Cinque Nam's unreal. And the guy's kind of an interesting, like kind of wacky dude. He goes around, he just kind of hand picks his grapes and then takes them and makes these really strange blends. And it's pretty amazing stuff. So yeah, that's
an
become
industrial winery down like in the harbor area, right? Like in Ventura, it's like kind of an industrial looking building. Like it doesn't look like a winery. It looks like
no. And he goes around and just like hand picks the grapes he wants from all over, and then makes these like boutique, wild, like different kind of like Shiraz or this. I mean, things that you wouldn't think were like super high end. Everybody's thinking like a Opus or some form of Meritage blend or whatever. And this stuff is unreal. So it's now we have different wine allocations. So they don't necessarily allow you to select. They just go yes or no. You get like a letter, and then you have to say yes, and then what shows up shows up. So it's pretty wild.
It's elitism at its best.
Oh.
Have you guys seen this? These red boots. Will, throw that up. These red boots that are coming out.
Yeah.
You
You mean
know what I'm talking about?
Well, isn't there some weird correlation with like red boots and like these, like Ronald McDonald?
Okay.
They do look like the Ronald McDonald boots.
Yeah.
They're like
Here's my question: are they being serious? And then get on them if they
I think
are.
they're-
Is that-
If I put those on and left my house, what do you guys be like? What the hell are you doing? Go back inside.
one of men's
I
journals
would
things
say
is,
we'd kick your ass,
right.
but that probably wouldn't happen.
Well, do you think you could run like if you were in a like a bad situation? Do you think you could take off and like fucking take off running and actually get away from a bad person or a bad situation in those?
They look like earbuds.
Sean likes
Huh?
Uggs. I'll get you those for your birthday.
love a good.
I think this group is going to totally let Men's Journal down on the fashion side. So we'll make sure we got to find somebody that can talk to all this.
These are John Welbourn earbuds.
Do you know what? I was just thinking the most emasculating thing I could imagine is getting your ass beat by a dude wearing Uggs.
That's a good. That's a
And a
better-
fanny pack.
If Sean was wearing Uggs and all of a sudden just like like threw like an 8-punch combo and knocked the dude out, I'd be like, wow, that guy beat him up in Uggs. I don't know what's worse, getting beat up or the fact that he's wearing Uggs. Probably the Uggs.
Could be the Uggs.
Yeah, I just don't understand. It's almost like, did you get a picture of Sam Smith in that outfit?
Oh, where he looked like a butt plug?
Is that what you're calling it?
Yeah, like that black thing. He looked like a butt plug.
Oh
shit.
man.
Yeah, like multiple butt plugs.
What is that?
I don't know.
I think that's what they were calling it. They were calling him.
When we went to New York following the 777, we went on Fox and Friends and then GMA. A good guy, a friend of ours who has done extremely well. He's got a B behind his name in terms of billionaires. Took us to this restaurant in New York. It was really bougie, chic is the best way I can say it. But do you remember?
I had a $270 old fashioned there.
Just insane. Well, here's the thing.
That was like
Amazing.
Tastes like an old fashioned. This is really good.
I'm 2 beers deep, but all in the bar. These are either extremely wealthy people, or these are like people trying to be influencers. I've never seen more cameras where they had a
little
light
thing on it
on top of it, and they were doing live.
What?
And I'm just watching it. And I don't know if you remember. One guy comes up to me, and real tiny guy, really weird looking, and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "I'm an influencer." I'm like, and I'm 2 beers. I haven't slept for days. 2 beers, so I'm good at that point.
That's like 6 beers.
Yeah,
I
6
haven't
beers.
slept, yeah.
And the guy's like, "Yeah, I have fuck you money. Just sold my documentary to Netflix. I'm a big time influencer." He pulls out his phone.
said that.
Yeah. And he pulls out his phone and he's like, and it's Elon Musk's phone number. He's like, I could call Elon Musk right now. I'm like, cool. And I pull out my phone. I'm like, that's Antoinette Sarraille. It's my mom. I can call her anytime. It's like, hey, moms are important. But I walked him over to Andy Stumpf. Who's at the table. And yeah, John knows Andy. And I'm like, hey, Andy, this guy will, I think you two could collaborate. And I walk away.
Jesus.
That guy comes back. And he's like, that guy is really mean, man. I'm like, that would just happen. And he had some choice words for me. But so
It's
let's
like saying, here, you want to play with my rattlesnake?
Yeah. Have you guys been doing the cold plunge?
Yeah, well, I do a cold shower every day.
I started those in Afghanistan.
And it wakes me up in a better mood. It's really weird. Like my mood, that's the thing I notice the most. Like it's miserable, obviously for 2-3 minutes, but then I wake up way quicker than normal. And I go immediately into sweats and Uggs, right? Which is the key to the process, right?
Uggs.
You're cold, it's miserable. You jump into Uggs and sweats, and all of a sudden you start like your life comes back to your body. You start smiling, you're awake. Mood is better for like 3 hours. Like before, like the morning, because we're up 5 o'clock at the gym, 6 o'clock. And certain days you're just dragging. But now the cold shower, I'm like electroshock to life.
So I started doing that, I think, after I read, what was it, the 4-day work week? And you talked about cold showers. I started in Afghanistan during the winter, which was freezing.
Yeah.
The problem with Texas, though, during the summer.
I know it's Luke.
So throw the cold plunge.
The cold water is not cold.
I recently added this. You guys haven't been over to the house.
I ain't getting in the
So I've got a full sauna in this thing.
I'll stick to
Holds
this.
at around 40. The thing is awesome.
Yeah.
But I can't go past like 3 or 4 minutes because of one body part. That's it.
Yeah, well,
So I think I'm gonna get like
you're
It's fine. I don't think
you're not
Yeah.
supposed to.
Like
Like,
3 minutes
all
on-
the
2 and 3 minutes,
all the
right?
science on it is 3 minutes. 3 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. Like that's where all the benefit is.
I'll just stick with
That's
the
the
sauna.
physiologic benefit.
Otherwise you're dying.
Same thing with the sauna. It's like 3 days a week. That's where the true benefit of it is.
I mean, John, you guys were doing contrast post workout in the NFL.
So when I came, like in '99 when I came in the NFL, there was a dude named Sean Landetta, was a punter for 25 years in the NFL, and he was probably in his like early 40s at the time, and he used to do contrast. He would go 3 in the hot, 2 in the cold, and he'd go back and forth like 10 times every day. And I remember asking him, I'm like, hey, what's the deal with that? And he said when he was like a little kid, he grew up in New York, and they used to go to this men's club, and he said the old Jewish cats used to like get in the hot like steam, and then they would get in this thing called the cold plunge, and they would go back and forth, and they swear it was like the secret to longevity. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, well, let me tell you a better story. He goes, I was playing for the Giants. We were going out to play a big game, and LT liked to party, and so he actually bought a strip club and have it moved next door to the Meadowlands so he could go, party and have a good time. And so all of a sudden they're like getting ready for the game. They go out for pregame. They come out. LT's still not there. And they sent like a search party out to find him. And so all of a sudden these like trainers and coaches come back dragging, basically carrying him in. They'd found him in the back of the strip club, passed out. And they started like brought him in the training room, took his shirt off, and they started dunking his head back and forth between hot and cold. And about the 10th time, all of a sudden he snaps his head up and his eyes are lit up, and he doesn't say anything. He just walks in the locker room, pulls his clothes off, pulled his pants on, no jock, pulled his shoulder pads on, no shirt, put his socks on, tied his shoes, pulled on his helmet, no gloves, no tape, nothing, walked out and set the single season sack record that day. And it was like, so contrast every single day. So I've done it every single day since I was probably 99. So it was funny when all of a sudden it became very bougie and very cool and influencer, and like, you know, you don't really live in Austin, or you're not really a tech person or an influencer unless you do cold plunges. And I'm like, you mean cold fucking water? You mean the same shit we used to go surfing when I was a little kid, like you guys as SEALs? So it's really hilarious to me too when people talk about like how it builds mental toughness and resilience. And I'm like, you mean getting in cold water? Like that's like the level of toughness and resilience. I just think it's kind of funny, especially for like guys that are like telling this to SEALs, or guys that are professional fighters, or, you know, a guy that played 10 years in the NFL or whatever. And it's like, oh, really? So like the extent of like your hardship and how, you know, and this is what's building your mental resilience is 2 to 3 minutes in 40-degree water. Like that's a hard one for me to wrap my head around. So, but if that's what they need to feel like they're warriors.
I saw a social media post a few days ago, and I'll get the exact facts wrong, but the point is salient. So I think it's in like 1914. There's a shipwreck crew, basically on an iceberg, and like 145 guys lived on this iceberg, survived for like 100 and some odd days, came back in time to go fight World War I, went and fought World War I. All of them survived. And then they're like, but this winter, 12 people died in New York in their cars because they ran out of power for 18 hours.
Yeah, we're soft.
It's like the world has changed.
We're soft.
Something is definitely.
What do you expect? You have so much comfort, luxury.
Yeah.
And no. The days of Teddy Roosevelt, man. We've got to get our youth back. That's a longer story. Speak of stuff that's sort of coming up in front. This infrared. This is becoming real popular right now as well.
Yeah.
Will's thrown that out.
That's true.
All I see is hair loss. Should I start this, dude?
This is pretty interesting. We had a guy on the podcast for Power Athlete Radio that was big into this, and he sent us some of these devices. And like, whenever I get sent this stuff, I reach out to two people, Doc Parsley and Rob Wolf. And I'm always like, we have a text thread where I'm like, what do you think? Is this BS? And then like Rob will be like, well, and then Doc's like, I don't know, inconclusive. So we just give it a shot. But I also think like economy of time, like one of my favorites is you see these like guys, they'll be like, oh, this is what entrepreneurs need to do. If you want to be like a billionaire, you have to journal for 30 minutes and you have to infrared sauna, cold plunge and this. And as I go through and count it, I'm like, so your work day doesn't start till noon because you're doing all this stuff. So I always think like what can you execute? But yeah.
I mean, there's great research behind saunas. It's complex. I mean, it's not something that works in a soundbite because there's heat shock proteins. There's all sorts of metabolic changes, and there's things that far IR does and near IR does, and stuff that just plain heat does, and it's all slightly different. But the fact of the matter is, it does increase longevity. It does help with a lot of metabolic disorders, and cold plunges do too. There's a time and a place for them, but it's like everything else. Nothing is the solution. It's like everything's a piece of the solution. And really, I approach everything in health from a very evolutionary standpoint. We all used to get a lot of sunlight. We all definitely would have gotten into cold water. We would have survived winters with not a whole lot of clothing. You think a couple of 100 years ago, what was life like? We've been evolving for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. Go figure that doing the shit that we evolved to do makes us healthier. I mean, it just makes sense that we have physiologic mechanisms that need to be exercised. You don't need to geek out on the science of it. It's like, yeah, you need to get really hot, uncomfortably hot sometimes. You need to get uncomfortably cold sometimes. Those are what's called hormetic stresses. Those are things that make you physiologically more resilient. Does a keto diet work? Yeah, it works. But if you're a keto diet all the time and you travel and you go around the world in 7 days and you're eating Kentucky Fried Chicken because that's all you can grab right before you get on a flight. That guy's a bag of shit because he's been on a keto diet. Like, so there has to be flexibility. You have to understand that there's utility to all of this stuff, but it needs to be used as an adjunct just to living a good lifestyle.
Tyson, did you see he looked at me?
I saw that.
I ate the
countries.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Hey, Doc, Doc, what's the number? Doc, what's the number that you? What's the number that you told me recently? Was it like everybody's either like, if you're a man over the age of 50, either it's a heart attack or cancer, and that's the way we're gonna go.
Well, basically, all society, 80, if you look at the bell curve of death, 86.5% of us are going to die from a heart attack, stroke, or cancer. So, if you completely get rid of cardiovascular disease like everybody wants,
53,
just means we're all going to die of cancer. So we're all going to die. And I think that was the point of the conversation we were having.
I'll die of all three, probably, on that guy.
Well, the research on the saunas, which came out of Finland, was like, I think it was 30 minutes a week. You pretty much take your chance of getting a heart attack down to like 0.001%. So three times a week at 30 minutes at over 135 degrees decreases cardiovascular and that's absolute risk. So it decreases absolute risk by about 90%, but twice a week reduces it by about 60%. So so basically, Doc's like, hey, if you get in the sauna, you're not going to get a heart attack. Means all that's left is cancer. And all the research shows, all the stuff Don Incledon was doing in Cosenta was if you can exercise with regularity, killer cells come out and your chances of cancer decrease. So I mean, it's
exercise really does most of it. all the same shit. I was almost all done by exercise. I have a cold plunge in my sauna, and I drink coffee with butter while I'm in.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're coming over.
So, speak of another topic, not that it's a fad, it's just come to the forefront. It's sort of like, mental health. We talked about mental health like 15 years ago. Now it's the hot topic. But we've got Shadia Ackle, who's going to join us. She just signed off, but she's going to sign back in. She is a functional medicine coach. She focuses in gut health. Again, gut health is wildly important. Well, why she's signing back in, I mean, you deal with a lot of these functional doctors. Right?
Yeah. So really, the idea behind a functional medicine doctor, as opposed to what we call allopathic doctors, which is in America what we think of as general medicine, they're trying to find the root cause. They're trying to stay away from pharmaceutical solutions unless it's absolutely necessary, but there's an exit strategy for it. But instead of saying, oh, you have high blood pressure, let's put you on this pill, maybe 2 pills, get you managed and do that forever. It's like, all right, why do you have high blood pressure? And let's figure that out. Right. And then you go through the multiple causes of, and almost everything can be fixed with lifestyle. Like 95% of health problems can be fixed with lifestyle.
Well, we're waiting on Shadia. Let's actually, once she's back in, throw her up. But so have you guys had your T levels and blood work done recently?
I get them done every 3 months.
3 months?
Yeah, same.
Well, I just had mine done. I appreciate Doc because he's like, hey, well, here's the good news. Your testosterone looks good if you were a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah. I think 6. Yeah.
So, a lot of guys, and again, you look at guys like the Liver King that have just totally put this bad persona on testosterone. So you're on TRT. Are you on TRT?
Yeah, I've been on it. I've been on for like 12 years. When I was 30, I went and get checked. My levels were 180. Pretty low. So, yeah.
That was the interesting thing. I remember the SEAL teams, they started testing guys, and like I was 36 and my levels were great. And then there would be like a 29-year-old, and they're like, yeah, we got to put you on T. Of course, I'm like, hey, give it to me as well. Like super
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the biggest markers of concern when I was working with the SEALs, when they started coming to my office and telling me the truth about what was going on in their lives. And I tested all this stuff, and, they were all in the lowest, maybe 20% of the normal range. And, I could go on for hours about how stupid that is to call that normal. But I think we got to pop on our guest here.
There she is. All right, Shadi, how you doing?
Hi, how are you guys? I'm wonderful.
Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in New York. Yeah, signal today is not working in my favor, but that's okay.
Now, where do you hail? Where do you hang your head when you're not traveling?
I'm currently in New York. So I was in Austin for about a year, and now I'm officially in New York.
Back, man, you left Austin. No kidding.
I did. Well, I do travel a lot, so I mean, you never know. I might go back at some point. I love Austin, so yeah.
Shadi, give us your quick background, and then why is gut health coming to the forefront?
Yeah, so I'm a functional medicine practitioner, and my background is actually in fitness. I've been working in nutrition and fitness up until maybe 2019, and it became clear to me through my own health journey that I needed to transition into something else. I struggled with a lot of IBS symptoms, so gut health was like the right approach for me, and it really supported me in my own health journey. I felt that I was struggling with all the symptoms. So it was just almost a wake-up call to really just go in a different direction. And then I decided to go full force in the functional medicine world in specializing in gut health. Ended up being, honestly, almost what saved my life.
Well, let me ask you this. What are like the worst, like 3 to 5 things that people are doing? What are those implications if you have poor gut health that you're mentioning beyond IBS?
It really depends. So what I noticed that's really common is when it comes to gut health, we find a lot of people are prioritizing one micronutrient to another. And for me, the way I see it is, well, what are we optimizing for? A lot of the times we see all of these different kinds of diets, and I don't have anything against it, but a lot of the times it's just people don't really know, and they don't have the answers to, like how to approach nutrition and how to approach their own goals, right? When it comes to fitness, nutrition, and also mental health, because they're also highly connected. So for me, it's just like, well, what is the vision or what is that ideal framework that you want moving forward for your own health? And then from that place, everything else can be developed. And that's kind of like how I work. I basically offer that initial just like entry point to questions about themselves, right? Like, how do we create the space for you to become more aware of those things that are, at the end of the day, just like delaying whatever goals you have. So something that's common is just like definitely not understanding good micronutrient ratios and how important it is to have the kind of good bacteria that's going to create optimal health in other areas, right? Like people struggling with depression, people struggling with anxiety. A lot of the times that comes from our the commensal bacteria in our gut microbiome, and it's just not talked about, right? So that's one of my missions, is to just bring awareness to that and not just ignore that that's present for all of us, and maybe just go the route of, okay, I'm going to use a mental health practitioner, just that, and not include other areas, right? So I'm a huge fan of just incorporating traditional medicine, functional medicine, and therapy if necessary, but it's not for all of us, but just bringing the awareness that is an important thing to consider.
What are some of the top things that people can start doing with regards to gut health that they can implement in their lives now? Just like simple steps. One, you said
simple
macronutrient.
Steps. Yeah, for sure. Macronutrient ratio is going to be a big one. Optimal fiber in your diet is going to be really key. And that, I think a lot of us already know that that's something that's important. But a good tip about that is increasing fiber intake in small amounts, because otherwise we go in the opposite direction and we start having loose stool or constipation and other unwanted GI symptoms. But fiber is a great route. And also understanding the source of your foods, right? Like not just prioritizing eating out. And I know this is challenging for all of us with the lifestyle that we have, but in general, if we can prioritize cooking at home and prioritizing not utilizing seed oils, it's going to be really important, right? So those are really basic. One that I really enjoy sharing is about oral health, because a lot of times we don't think about how important it is to actually take care of the microbiome and in our health, in our oral health. Some people like using mouth taping. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. I'm sure.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's one that I really enjoy, because we are shifting the bacteria not only in our throughout the whole GI tract, right? So we want to make sure that every step of the way is actually addressed. So I like tackling each area at a time. So yeah, I mean, those are really will be my top 3.
Well, dude, you guys all live this world. I mean, the amount of people I know for you, do you guys count your macros? You basically have a rough estimate, you know, how much protein?
I've been doing a little more animal-based diet, which I feel good doing. Yeah, a little bit more like carnivore diet with fermented milks and raw milks and just better sourced meat too. I feel really good. Definitely trying to reduce seed oils. I think there's definitely a lot of truth in that. Like a lot of things, I think like my mood's been based on like if I get vigorous exercise, cold water, hot. I think any physical stress improves my mood, which is kind of interesting. And I think eating healthy obviously really improves my mood. I sleep better. I think they're all super connected, but the more you get off track and you're not sleeping, you eat poorly, you don't exercise, you don't have any kind of physical stress in your life, you just go down that hill quick.
Which is probably a large
most people
portion of the population.
Yeah.
And something I know that Shadia would have said, but took for granted probably is that, you know, you have to eat real food to have good gut health, right? I mean,
100%.
you can't be eating crap out of a box and out of a bag, you know, and out of fast food restaurants and expect to have good gut health no matter what else you do. So you can't eat things that are, you know, we weren't designed to eat.
Right,
Well,
and that
John,
also goes.
Go ahead, please.
So, and that also goes for supplementation, right? Like a lot of times we want to use that as the first resource instead of, okay, let's acknowledge that diet is the number one foundational key, and then we can resource to supplementation.
Yeah, I mean, the true definition of supplement, right? Yeah. It's like there's ideal way to live, there's reality. In between there is where we supplement, right?
Right.
You live the best life you possibly can, but we can't all live exactly how we should because we have lives that get in the way. And so that's what supplements are for. Whether it's well, but you know, if you're a single mom and you have kids and you have a job and it's like, you're not going to live the ideal lifestyle. You're going to live the best you possibly can. You can work on your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, your stress. But you know, there's going to be something, and I'm not saying it necessarily needs to be a nutritional supplement. Like gadgets that help you learn how to meditate. That's a supplement. A sauna is a supplement. An ice bath is a supplement. It's supplemental behaviors that are, that try to bridge that gap and mitigate the damage that's done by not being able to live exactly how we evolved to live.
So I read a study recently where men are only getting about 50 to 60% of the protein they actually need. I know Gabrielle Lyon talks a lot about this, but John, when you guys were playing in the NFL, I mean, did you put a precedence on getting protein first?
Yeah, no. Well, when you eat, like, I think at my leanest, I was eating about 7,000 calories a day. So, I mean, like, if you think about, like, I mean, so what's hilarious, what's funny for me is, I mean, Mauro De Pasquale and I talked about this deal in like the early, 99, 2000, when I met Rob Wolf and he started talking about the paleo diet. We'd been eating that way, Vince Gironda's Stone Age diet, Zangus had put us on that years ago. The one thing that's pretty true, and I think I've just observed this over time, the healthiest people tend to be able to eat with the most diversity. So if like the only thing that you can digest well is something like red meat, and that's all that you feel good on, like, Jordan Peterson and his daughter, for example, if you're that metabolically broken and have this many issues that this is the only thing you can digest, then you're fine. But I'm very apprehensive when healthy individuals naturally start like almost like creating these guardrails and putting themselves in these positions. So the healthiest people can eat with the greatest diversity. The research is very conclusive that the people that eat more fiber tend to be healthier than those that don't. So like, the whole Paulo Saladino vegetables are trying to kill you thing. Well, if you cook them, Like it's sensationalism. It's a different version of the Liver King, and it gets a little painful when we have such a massive body of research, and there's a lot of dog shit out there, don't get me wrong, but it's pretty conclusive. Like if you can eat a naturally diverse diet, Roy G. Biv, if you eat for color, which is what I do, I try to eat with as much diversity based upon Roy G. Biv as possible. I try to rotate protein sources. I try to, get everything, sourced locally if I can. Peter Ballerstedt, who's the world's leading forage agronomist, which means he travels the world looking for the most nutrient-dense grass on the planet, and then he brings it back and they try to raise more nutrient-dense meat as a way to figure out if this grass is the most nutritious form. And the way they do it is they feed it to animals, they slaughter them, and they look at nutrient density. So we had him on the podcast. He spoke at the Ancestral Health Symposium. And his deal was the first question should be if you're eating meat. And if you are, then you can kind of get into these other sources. So, I mean, it's pretty conclusive, man. A high protein diet. After that, we can argue about macros, but the only non-negotiable for me, and I believe for us through human history with evolution, is we've always eaten a naturally high protein diet. Even if you go back and look at any of the Weston Price, any of the hunter-gatherer stuff, there wasn't any hunter-gatherer group that didn't eat some form of high protein diet. Now you can kind of base it off of did they eat more carbs or more fat? I think that's all based upon location. But for the most part, it's kind of a non-negotiable. So especially if you want to carry a lot of muscle. And we had Gabrielle on the podcast, and it's it's longevity. When my dad got cancer, he had cancer in his stomach and his liver, and all of a sudden his liver started pushing out fluid through cirrhosis. And we basically did a basic equation, as much fluid as he was pushing out, and that was pure muscle. We saw the weight loss, and the doctor was within a day, kind of put his expiration date, and he hit it. And I remember being the person that can maintain lean body mass and muscle the longest is the people that tend to live the longest. So anything you can do, lift weights, eat a high protein diet.
How much muscle mass you maintain? That is the number one predictor for longevity.
You better hit the gym.
And also it's really hard to carry a lot of muscle in a low protein environment. I mean, I was pretty consistent during my NFL career. I carried between 270 to 282 pounds of lean muscle, and it's very expensive. It's hard to do. You got to eat a lot of calories and do a ton of training and a lot of sleep and all that, and it's a pain in the ass. But I mean, it's how you become invincible. So if you want to be Wolverine and be invincible, carry as much muscle mass as you can in relation. Fat's extremely oxidative. If you look at longevity,
you don't need any scientific training to look at a bull and look at a plant and go, what has more protein in it? But
just
it's pretty obvious that you have to have animal products.
And muscle is extremely insulin sensitive. I mean, and the greater insulin sensitivity, the more muscle you carry, and then you look at how oxidative fat is, and the people that carry excess amount of body fat age at a greater rate than the people that don't. I mean, it's kind of evolution. I mean, it's hard when you look at the body of evidence that we both not only read, but you see, and then you hear all these weird conflicting things. It's oh, but I can be fat and happy. And I'm okay, I'm not saying you can't be happy, but don't argue with me that this lifestyle choice is somehow based on longevity and living your best life. It's the complaint of being in a standardized health pool. How can you be in a standardized health pool with a country of people that don't care what they eat, or more importantly, care about their health or fitness or wellness? So, I mean, it's a very interesting problem.
Shadi, do you think people that are, and this is, again, we're not fat shaming anyone, do you truly think anyone who's obese can say they're happy?
I mean, that is such a, right. So it is a sensitive topic. I'd rather just err on the side of that's a different conversation. But in my personal experience with my clients, I can tell you that there's always that connection, right? So it's almost impossible for me to separate the two. And there's always a mindset component to whatever's happening under everything, right? And why we're making the decisions we're making. So the answer to your question would be yes, in my experience.
Well, I just did
you dodged
that perfectly executed.
I just read an interesting piece of research for a consult I did. It was based on NEAT, which is what non-essential activity, like basically like the people that fidget and keep moving, and like like my wife who never sits down, constantly moving all the time. Like those people burn as much as 30% more calories a day than the people that sit sedentary. And the amount of health and wellness and just like in terms of being
100%.
leaner and more fit, the people that just move more, and this is like people that fidgeted. So they have people that fidget and like don't sit down, and the people that like don't fidget. I mean, it wasn't anything, exercise related. It wasn't calorie related, anything. Those people burn as much as 30% more calories and can consume more. So like they, all of a sudden now the margin of error is much greater. So like, I think we're in a situation where most of this is just from a lack of movement. Like just get out and do stuff. And I know like, people say this and it's like, just do more. And as simple as like find the last space in the parking lot. You go somewhere, like park as far away as possible so you force yourself to walk, or walk down all the aisles at the grocery store. Just find some basic things.
Mow your own lawn, wash your own car, that activity, that kind of shit
Sounds boring.
that's hugely important. And I think we're asking the wrong question too. Have philosophical, y'all can shut me up anytime you want, but like I don't think happiness should be the goal, right? I mean, like happiness is a temporary temporary condition. What we're looking for is like, am I living a meaningful life? Am I leading a life that I want? And am I in a place where I can move myself towards my desirable goals? That I wouldn't define as happiness. I'd define that as like having meaning for your life, and motivation. And if you're obese or metabolically broken, you're not in a position to move toward your desirable outcomes nearly as well as somebody who's metabolically and physically healthy.
Well, Shadi, stick around because we're going to have some Q&A. We always love a woman's perspective. But first, I want to say that we're happy that Tyson has improved. When he sent me this, I said, "Yeah, don't send me your headshot, man." What happened here?
Well, I was rolling jiu-jitsu with my good buddy here, and he choked me out and wouldn't let go fast enough. But no, I hurt my neck. And the whole week, it was just having excruciating pain, and I wasn't sleeping. It was throbbing. I'm like, man, I messed the nerve up somehow. And I'm coming to work Friday morning, and I'm like driving.
Well, the toes to bar, Tim. He's
Yeah,
got a role to play.
Yeah. So Sean choked me out, and Tim made me do 100 toes to bar, so my neck just flared up. And I was driving in. I'm like, oh shit, I can't close my eye. And I'm like driving my truck like this. It's like 5 a.m. I'm like, uh-oh. I get to the gym. I'm like, Sean, I can't close my eye. I must have like Bell's palsy, like joking.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I go to the bathroom and my whole face locks out. I'm like, I'm having a stroke. I'm having a stroke. Oh shit. My heart's racing. So like, I'm like, I got to go to the ER. They admit me. It's like I'm having a stroke.
Oh, you went to the drop-in care.
Oh yeah, I went to I went to the 24th, and they're like, dude, you're stroking out, buddy. You better go. We can't handle you. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Yeah, they didn't want me. So I'm just driving on the freeway, like thinking I'm going to stroke out on my own. I'm like, great. Get to the hospital. They admit me in 2 full days, CT, blood work, MRI, this, that, and the other. Turns out I had Bell's palsy. Full Bell's palsy. It lasted like about a month. And it was rough.
It was autumn reevaluating.
My girlfriend was just like, I didn't sign up for this. I had to go to Arkansas for Christmas because it happened over Christmas. My face is fully locked out. I'd be like, meet her whole family being like, boxing safe. Don't worry. No side effects from getting hit. CT is fake. But yeah, it lasts about a month. And then it comes, came right back, my face. Thank God.
It is Bell's palsy sometimes permanent, or is it always usually?
I don't think there's ever permanent in that it's always there, but I think it can be like lifelong reoccurrent for some people. And there's multiple causes for it. Some we understand better than others, but if it's some sort of maybe reactivating virus, like say like a herpes virus type things that
which I didn't have. I don't have.
Can keep.
I'm clear. Let's put it on the record. I'm clear.
Right.
I don't have that.
I just take this Valtrexin as a performance enhancer.
Yeah, the doctor put me on Valtrex. I didn't know what that was, but it's all about suppression, I guess.
So you guys, we've got time for a few questions. Will, you got some teed up to the group?
Yeah. breakfast, but I train daily. What advice would you give me about that? Eat fruit or juice before you train, or maybe go with the breakfast route?
I'll let the experts take it.
I'd say it depends on what type of training you do, what your goals are, but for the most part, again, we're designed to be resilient metabolically, physiologically. So if you can work out fine without, without eating and you feel good, I wouldn't worry about it. If you're gassing on your workouts, then I'd say, yeah, you probably need some carbohydrates depending on what type of stuff you're doing, but almost certainly, a high fiber, fairly moderate glycemic load with a low glycemic index is something like a sweet potato with butter, or something like that. Fiddle around with it and see if it makes you feel better. But if you're feeling great, I wouldn't care. Like, I'm completely agnostic as to when people eat or how often people eat. Just depending on are you reaching your goals, and your goals are your goals. So I'd have to know a lot more about like what type of training you're doing and what type of experiences you're having.
Well, more context to that question, since she's a soldier, so they're probably working out early. Do you guys?
We do it fasted. I mean, I do Tim's workout. I prefer. I just feel better.
You're hydrating. You're drinking water.
I drink a gallon or two a day, but I prefer nothing in my stomach.
Yeah.
Shadia, how about you? Do you work out early?
I do. I personally, when it comes to women, I do have, I guess, a more strict opinion, because I think there is an importance on prioritizing hormone balance. So for me, it depends definitely on what are we optimizing for, really. But just bringing that awareness that's something that's also important to pay attention to, especially for women.
Mine is Jack Daniels.
Or Pendleton whiskey.
Or Pendleton whiskey.
There it is.
John, any advice?
I recommend people try both. I mean, for me personally, I did not like to eat before a football game. I felt that if I ate too much, I just felt sluggish, especially when you're sitting out there in front of millions of people in white spandex. So I just played most of the games. I would eat a little bit, but mainly fasted. But I know for, if you train early in the morning, it's kind of a pain in the ass to get up even earlier, and then, however it works. But I know for women, and I deal with this with my wife and some of the other, ladies we deal with, I really am against fasting for ladies. I think maybe max 12 hours, but I really think for a lot of women, just the natural stress associated with like being a mom and all the other things of being, with a woman, I really think that like going and training in a fed state is dramatically better for them. I've just seen way better performance. So I think for the guys, it's, I think there's a larger margin of error. I think men, if you look at like environmental toxins, for example, they don't necessarily always look at it how it affects men, because women tend to be just much more sensitive in terms of these things. So I think for a lot of the women we worked with, I always recommend like get up early enough to where you can eat something that you feel good, that you're ready to go. For the guys, I just kind of throw them to the wolves a little bit, like whatever allows you to do better. I just think that men tend to just a little bit margin of error on that stuff.
The total amount of blood testosterone is one of the reasons that men are more versatile in that region. There's a lot there's a lot to that, what John was alluding to, but the master hormone in both men and women is testosterone, but men have 10 times more testosterone, and testosterone is anti-inflammatory. It does help with fuel partitioning. It does help with mobilizing fatty acid as a fuel source. It makes hard things seem easier. So the higher your testosterone level, probably the better you're going to do with a fasted workout. So that makes sense. And then there's lots of other reasons for that. But
the other thing we saw, and the doc can talk more about this, when we were especially working in the CrossFit space, it was so glycolytic heavy, and it was so much metabolic conditioning that it was tending to fry the adrenals out. And actually, the girls that we trained, the first thing I had them do was I was like, no birth control. So the elevated estrogen would just crank them out to the point where it was like this terrible adrenal fatigue and just a ton of issues. So that elevated estrogen became a hell of a problem, especially for the girls we traded that were like, 2 or 3 workouts a day, CrossFit Games competitors. So the first thing we had them do was like no birth control, and their performance went through the roof. They started suffering from a lot of the adrenal fatigue, and then making sure that they were well fed at all times. I'm like, like whatever allows you to perform at your best. And I've seen this with my wife. within her stuff. And she eats a meal, and she competed in the CrossFit Games, and that was something that was very, very important. So I think a lot of times people mistake this kind of performance with suffering, where like I have to suffer, and I don't know why. I mean, for a lot of the women that we worked with, I just think like you don't have to punish yourself. Like you can be well fed. We can go in and train. You don't have to burn yourself to the ground. We can lift weights. If you eat a high protein diet and caloric restriction and do a little bit of like walking, a little bit of zone 1, zone 2, usually everybody's pretty lean and pretty good. So I just don't know if we have to go like burn our body on the funeral pyre every day. And I saw that for almost a decade with the CrossFit stuff, to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore, just because I just didn't see longevity and health in the like the tip of the spear that everybody was aiming for. So, and that's why I recommended people. I was like, lift some weights, do a little bit of metabolic conditioning, go to yoga, do whatever you like. At the end of the day, the workout that you can most consistently do is the one that, tends to be the best. The one though is, I think,
the one you will do is the best one for you.
Do you remember when CrossFit came onto the market? So many SEALs like jumped like into the deep end, and
that was Andy Stump's fault.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
no.
Don't get me started on Andy Stump. A lot of that's Andy Stump's fault. I landed in the trees in Australia for our last jump because he cut me off on my my path in.
Sounds about right.
Sometimes in life, you just land in the trees. You land in the trees, make lemonade. All right. But yeah, so many SEALs were just getting hurt. But I do want to move to the next question, and you guys heard it straight out of John Welbourn's mouth. For all the guys, if you are on birth control, get off. It's affecting your performance.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's but I mean, if you also look at for men, especially if you have the testosterone levels of a eunuch, and high estrogen levels, like we've had that where, we had guys coming into the gym who were absolutely cooking themselves, and it became this like, what is it? Sex binding globulin hormone was in like the 70s and 100s. And I'm like, dude, the stress of either environmental, eating, lack of sleep, alcohol, like all these other factors that Doc knows much better working with the SEALs, became just a hell of a problem. And to the point where it's like, dude, let's back it up and like at least try to get you hormonally, and whatever that looks like. Not everybody's designed to burn it at both ends. But also we found too that sometimes people, like this is something I've observed from going and doing jujitsu with Shandi and those guys at Six Blades. A lot of guys come and train, but they're not physically fit enough, and they think that like, hey, I'm going to roll for an hour, it's going to be enough, when maybe it's 15 minutes max. And so a lot of these guys I recommend, I'm like, man, you need to be doing something else out of the gym, whether it's some zone 2 stuff, lifting some weights, just from a durability factor. And I think it like, people kind of go in, and we saw this with CrossFit, like CrossFit's the panacea, it's the answer, or I'm going to go jujitsu and it's all I'm going to do. And I think it's, when you're constantly fighting, and I wore a heart rate monitor at jiu-jitsu, and it was either like a resting or a 4. There was no like, kind of like, it was either like we were, fucking getting it on, or it was nothing. So I think being able to be smart about how you attack this, like lift some weights, do some aerobic work, do something that forces some movement, whether it's boxing or jits or something that's still sport-based. And then don't be weird, eat a high protein diet, like, just don't be a fucking weirdo. If all of a sudden you find yourself like eating raw testicles with a loincloth, like, fucking talking about ancestral tenets, you've gone too far to the other side, and you need to peel it back because you're a fucking weirdo. So don't be weird.
All right, next question.
Weird. Don't be weird.
Coming in asking,
Man.
I mean, I think it just depends. I mean, there's a lot of factors in there. For one, it's like, does the boxer have any grappling ability, and does the jiu-jitsu guy have any striking ability? So it's going to be that little gray area that will probably determine it. But
And are you on asphalt?
yeah, exactly. I mean,
Right.
you can get caught with shots coming in, obviously. But if you have zero grappling ability, you're probably going to get dragged to the ground, and then you're just going to be a fish out of water. And the problem is you'll get exhausted because you won't know what to do. You'll panic, and then you're exhausted and you can't defend yourself. So
Statistically, there's got to be with the UFC
it was hard because the
people that
early
have
days
better
were just
ground
like,
skills versus
it was like
skills.
early days. It was like a guy that did air conditioning repair. It was, it was
Tank
like,
Abbott, who's working
yeah,
the bouncer.
it was just,
fighter.
it wasn't like,
not
they weren't
balanced.
like,
No.
they weren't necessarily athletes. It was just like a freak show. So it wasn't like, nowadays you can see the most dominant MMA seems to be wrestling and boxing.
Yeah.
So like if you watch
Yeah.
like last title fight, it was like they're either basically in a wrestling scramble or they're striking.
Right.
And some kind of blend. And then sometimes one guy will get on the back and you have to defend a submission. So there's jiu-jitsu is working on that. But it seems to be a lot more the transition between wrestling and boxing.
We got to get the ladies' opinion here. Shadia, who do you think wins, boxer or jiu-jitsu?
Boxer for sure, by far.
Very big deal.
I mean, that would be my preference. Yes.
Man, I'm going to take a wrestler. My buddy who comes and trains with us.
Jiu-jitsu or boxing?
Oh, is it boxing? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with the wrestler. So my buddy Matt wrestled heavyweight for Cornell, and he came up and did some wrestling stuff with us. And he is absolutely the scariest dude I've ever seen. Like I was like, dude, there's no way I'd want to fight this dude. So I just have a feeling like, and also like, what kind of jiu-jitsu are you doing? I didn't understand this until I started kind of working with Victor and these guys, that there's different types of jiu-jitsu. There's like the big dude kind of what Shandy does, where it's like in Salo, where it's fucking road grader, close game, a lot of pressure, side control, smash, smash, smash. And then there's kind of like a more kind of like distance game where I'm going to try to do all these moves. And I think, it kind of depends on the style a little bit, but I don't know. But also one of the scariest things to ever see is actually a professional boxer throw hands. We used to see amateur guys that, you don't want to see those dudes out on the street. So I don't know. I think it's also comes down to the person who's more willing to really throw the first punch. So first meaningful touch, which we used to talk about in the NFL and in boxing too. So
You guys have a tape from your old matches?
I got one on YouTube. My MMA
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to throw some up next time. Critique through. What time for one more question? What we got?
One asking if y'all incorporate probiotics in your daily regimen.
I used to.
I used to.
I like raw milk. I mean, I like yogurt and I don't take like a probiotic supplement, but fermented stuff I like.
Yeah, along those lines, I think there's more convincing evidence on prebiotics than probiotics, and I would I'd defer to Shadia on knowing the details of gut health. It's exceedingly complex, and we don't understand a lot more than we do understand. But I think it could be handled with nutrition. But if you are going to supplement with anything, my personal preference is prebiotics over probiotics.
What is a prebiotic?
Well, I mean, a probiotic is competing with what you have in there, and a prebiotic is kind of pushing the biome towards a certain outcome.
Shadia, I mean, this one was teed up for you.
Yeah, this is your world.
Yeah. So I do have, I guess, a preference with both. I definitely would go with prebiotics as my number one, but I do think they're both important for different reasons, and it's also like it depends on what is that specific person needing, right? So like everything I do is so personalized, so it's like, okay, it's hard for me to just give you an approach on how to handle whatever situation we're presenting when it comes to GI symptoms, when I haven't seen a functional testing, right? So like for me, it's like that would be my number one tool. And then from there, I can pretty much support and make that decision when it comes to like that, what that person's struggling with. So it's so specific, right?
Everything's individualized. That's the unfortunate reality that we're all an N of one, because we all have our own. We have our own genetics. We have our own metabolic condition. We have our own goals. We have our own metrics, our own consistency, our own discipline. Like everybody's an N of one. So it's hard to figure it out. Even if it's your job, it's hard to figure out how to do everything perfectly.
John?
You know what? Like, I think, you kind of see these things go in evolutions, but I remember there was a big push for probiotics and prebiotics. And I think, I don't know if I ever saw like any improvement in anything. I actually like what Sean was saying about, like some fermented foods. I think, whether it be milk or dairy or, pickles or I like sauerkraut. So I try to eat sauerkraut and try to eat something fermented at least, I don't know, twice a week. Just like, since I was a kid, like we did liver and onions probably like twice a month when I was a kid. So now I just freeze liver and cut it up into little cubes and like maybe have like 2 or 3 ounces once or twice a month. So, I mean, I think, but then you see people that are like, oh, I eat liver every day. And you're like, a little too much. But, like the probiotic stuff is like, why are you taking it? Like, do you have issues? Is there something going on? And I feel like a lot of times with most supplements, people get their supplement recommendations from the bro. Hey, bro, I'm taking this and I feel great. Like I listened to a guy that was like, oh man, I got way stronger, put on a ton of muscle when I started taking copper. Right. So you need zinc, magnesium, iron, selenium, copper, these things to create muscle. Well, like if I'm not low in copper, me taking copper isn't going to help me. But how do we know? So I think for a lot of these things, like if you have an issue, or you're trying to fix it for a problem, like she said, it helps to have testing rather than just like, of course I take probiotics, or prebiotics or this. I mean, is there a need for it? I'm just not a fan of randomly taking stuff without some form of direction or at least understanding why I'm taking it. So like when I get all my blood work done, we usually do some form of micronutrient testing twice a year. And the biggest reason is that the food that we're eating today is not as nutrient dense as it was 100 years ago. So, I mean, I've seen conflicting stuff. I heard a guy the other day say it's like 8 times less. And then saw another guy jump in and say it was 10 to 35% less. I just know based off of the testing that Dr. Incledon has done, he thinks it's probably about maybe half as nutrient dense as it was, meaning like you would, if you were going to go eat broccoli, for example, you'd have to eat double the amount to get the same nutrients. So, maybe there's a need for something like powdered greens or some of the other stuff. But I think unless you've gone in and done the micronutrient or some of the testing, it's like being like, oh, I have low testosterone. How do you know? Well, I don't feel as good as I used to. Well, like that. And I hear that all way too often. And my biggest recommendation is like, go get tested. It's not hard. It's not like you have to go somewhere and like pay some dude $10 in a back alley. Like call your doctor. There's places you can do it online. Like there's a million different things. Like get the information. Like when the one thing that's been really big for working with the Brazilian fighters, they obviously come from a different climate. And, Austin, while it's sunny, it's not like that all the time. They were super low in vitamin D levels. So I read some research that people that are darker skinned that come from the equator, when they move to this North America area, are dramatically deficient in vitamin D. So I reached out to Thorne, got vitamin D tests for Philippe and, Arash and all the guys, Shandi as well. And some of them were low, some of them were fine, but we supplemented with vitamin D and instantly everybody's performance went up. They were like, man, I feel bulletproof. I feel great. I'm like, yeah, your vitamin D levels were 18. Now they're 70. And that makes a huge difference. So just like some small low hanging fruit in that way was just a huge factor. The other one is creatine. I think everybody that has some form of bone in their body should be taking creatine. I'm probably the longest continuous creatine user on the planet. And when they were talking about it being a steroid and a performance enhancer and hamstring pulls and all that, I was like, this is all bullshit. And now the research comes out with ATP and improves brain health, starving off, aging. And maybe one of the reasons that I don't have the cognitive issues that other NFL players might have just from the neuroprotectant of creatine. So I think that recommendation, just some simple stuff like that, just as low hanging fruit for most people, I think does pretty well. So that's my prebiotic deal.
And Shadi, I know you've got to go. Where can people find you, both on socials, website?
Yeah, my website is shadiakle.com and my IG is @shadiakle, so it's pretty easy.
Okay. Well, guys, gals, if you're looking for that gut health, please reach out to Shadia, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll see you again.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Guys, we'll close it out here. But first off, I want to appreciate or thank not only my wife for letting me know, but Tyson as well, that I'm getting out of shape.
Circles of shape.
Thanks.
God, he beat me to it. Dude, you're working yourself into a good round shape is what we usually go with.
I'm quick.
Hey, how many hip replacements do you have, buddy?
Round.
So, tomorrow morning I start working out with John to get back into it. It's been a journey. He's been helping me. Especially with nothing after that hip replacement. And that's the photo right there. That was 5 days before my hip replacement. And
Wow.
I've never been back. So John, that's your challenge right there, dude.
I'm in.
And
All right.
if you can't do it, power athlete is complete and utter fraud. And I do want to
Do we have to have the spray tan too, though? Or is
Right.
that-
so they spritzed me for that one. The girl was there and it was like, I'm like, stop. I'm like, no, we're done here.
Well, you have an open invitation to come box.
Yeah,
come
I'm
train
going to do
with
all
us.
this. I need my workouts from John.
Stop training the curves.
But John said one thing, and I want it for guys: you should not be meeting any men in a back alley and exchanging money for whatever it is. John, I don't know what's going on in your personal life.
But like I feel like whenever you start talking about this stuff, especially like hormone replacement or like any of this, it kind of has like a weird connotation with it, where people are either embarrassed or weird. I mean, even like I have clients or like doing consults for people, they're even like a little weird about it, and I'm like, hey man, you can lie to your priest, you can lie to whoever, like don't lie to me. I'm like your lawyer, don't lie to me. So. But like I don't think there's any shame in it. I think the biggest issue we've seen is that whether it be environmental, diet, fat, whatever it is, men are not as virile as they used to. I remember Rob Wolf telling me that like grandfathers, our great grandfathers probably had a sex binding globin hormone of like 7 to 10, and now I see guys in the 70s, 80s, and 100s who are in their 20s. For me, I was always really like 12, 15, 17 at the most. So it's really interesting that like either something is happening, and whether it be like, I don't know, diet, I'm sure Doc has got a lot of theories on it, but I just, when I look at like blood work and I start talking with a whole bunch of people, it does not appear that people are as durable today as they were. And I don't know if that's I don't know if that's nutrient density from the food that we're eating. I don't know if it's a lack of rest. Like, I don't know what it comes from. Maybe it's like the fact that we don't train when we're younger, or like, I don't know. But I definitely think, Sean Steele, what did he say about doing something hard every single day and you feel better when you do something hard? I really think that there's some real cadence in that. And I think, like the one thing that I took away from, who was it? It was the Lifespan book by, who's the little like geeky English
Sinclair.
Dude. Yeah, Sinclair. He had an interesting point. Somebody asked him why all of these things like the heat shock proteins over 170 and the cold and the training, like why that works the way it does. And he made an interesting point. He's like, when you put yourself closer to death, you actually get a positive gene expression. When you like make everything simple and easy and no hardship, your genes end up turning on in a way that like ends your life sooner. So if you want your genes to be on your side, they're like your allies, that when you're under attack, they're going to give positive gene expression. So putting yourselves in these situations is how you create longevity. And it's really the only explanation I've ever heard, because I mean, we can dig in on heat shock proteins and all the other stuff with this, and then you look at all the research, but on a cellular level, like, why is this working? And it's really the only explanation I've ever heard why these things work the way they do. When you go into the gym, and we do this all the time with like swinging heavy kettlebells, you get to a point where you're like, we have a 100, a 150, and a 200. And like, one of the workouts is you swing that 100 or that 200, 10 swings on the minute for 10 minutes to try to do 100 swings in 10 minutes. And the look around like round 3 or 4, where all of a sudden your eyes get lit up and you don't know like if you're going to fucking die, like that to me is positive gene expression. You're like, man, I just got to keep swinging this thing and hold on for dear life. So probably like being in the ring too, where you take some nasty shots and you're like, man, I don't know if I'm going to go, but also this dude looks way better than me, so I'm not going to give up.
Well, John, where can people find you as we close it out here?
I'm easy to find, just at John Welbourn on social. I'm fairly mildly active on Instagram, fairly mildly active on Twitter. I really, social media just feels overwhelming a lot of times, and especially with like all the information coming in. So I try to do more outputs and inputs. But if you want to go to Power Athlete, I'm really easy to find in that way. We have a huge, back-end community within our training programs, somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 people a day around the world checking programs. And we have a really pretty killer community on the inside of that. So I really invest a ton of time into that. And then we have, coaching through Power Athletes. We got about 150 certified coaches around the globe. We do events and then I moonlight and train some fighters, which has been a really fun deviation, because it's such a different like domain than what I'm used to, where it's like, hey, I'm going to mash my head through a guy. So the training the fighters and doing the JIT stuff has been really interesting for me, just because it's just such a different environment. And also those guys are really nice. So I also realized that working with people that are actually fun, nice, appreciative, and actually using it in meaningful ways is way more rewarding than working with a bunch of like fucking ornery, angry curmudgeons.
Dude,
So-
statistically,
Mud
fighters
is-
are the nicest guys.
Yeah.
They don't fight down in town. That's what I love. But hey, Tyson, where can people find you?
My Instagram is Mendiaz_Ty. You can find us on Archetype Boxing as well.
Yeah. Sean.
Yeah, archetypeboxing.com, Sean Apperson, S. Apperson. And yeah, just getting, our goal is obviously to get people to go out of their comfort zone, do something a little bit challenging and difficult, and learn a combative sport that will give them some confidence and make them feel better.
And let me tell you this: if you are visiting Austin, go check it out. Archetype Boxing. And the thing I love about it, and I'm not going to spin bullshit, is you guys are nice and you do it in a respectful way.
Yeah.
Versus some gyms I've been to where they're complete nutter dicks.
I think you gotta be welcoming. You gotta have some hospitality, nice people, and make them feel comfortable. It's an intimidating sport, and so is jiu-jitsu. They're all very intimidating. So if you're friendly and you're nice and you're welcoming, it's going to make it a lot easier. So yeah.
Doc.
DocParsley.com and DOC, short for doctor, DocParsley.com, or at Kirk Parsley, I think, is most of my social media stuff. Definitely Instagram is where I spend the most amount of time.
Well, fellas, I can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to growing this show amongst the five of us. You guys are the subject matter experts. I'm not. As I say, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, and that doesn't hurt my ego one bit because my teams win, and that's all I fucking care about. For everyone, hey, one thing we ask is, John's got a podcast, the Power Athlete Radio. Check it out and leave a review. Same for the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior podcast. Go to Apple Podcast, leave a review. They help us get better subjects you want to hear. You can also contact us through Men's Journal, but go check out mensjournal.com for the latest in gear, health and fitness, food and drink, style, which I promise you we'll get somebody who knows what the fuck they're talking about other than flannels, t-shirts, and jeans amongst this group. Yeah, and red boots. Travel, which we'll talk a lot about, adventure, and then of course the Everyday Warrior for people who hate traditional self-help but are looking for practical ways to enrich their lives through guys like this, not me, who have a lot of credibility and reputation in the space. So thanks for joining us. And until next time, this is the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior podcast, the live Power Hour. Thanks.